So welcome to today's session. So we're going to talk about generating machine learning predictions, building models without any code, right? And so this session is aimed at business analysts. So how many people are data scientists? Anybody in the room? Okay, that's a good sign. How many people are in IT? A few. How many people are business analysts? All right, well, you're going to have to work with me. So here's the thing about machine learning. So everybody thought the cloud was hot. So the cloud went from 0 to $50 billion a year in spend in about 12 years. Machine learning's done that in 7 years. So there's clearly this great interest in machine learning. I'm sure you're all interested in machine learning because you're here, right? You know, and you know, management consultancies tell you it's a magic button that, you know, solves all the world's problems. So I talk to our customers a lot around machine learning, their journey, their experiences. And this is what they tell me. They say, hey, we want to unlock value in our data. I think that's reasonable. Most people want to do that. We want to democratize machine learning. Do you guys hear that term? And then when we dive into that, I'm like, hey, what do you mean by that? Then they tell me, well, we need more machine learning builders. Like, we just can't build it fast enough. And I think there's something interesting going on. So when we roll up our sleeves and dive further in, I'm part of a group that does machine learning development. I work with data scientists and machine learning professionals, machine learning engineers, right? What I call ML professionals. And we tend to, as a group, focus on the machine learning lifecycle, right? And so we say, okay, we need to do data preparation, and we need to transform that data into features that are better suited to the models. And then we need to build the models, and we need to train them and tune them, and then we need to deploy them. And that cycle is interesting to the data science group, but sometimes there's this disconnect, and we forget where the business problem starts, which is in the business, right? And so there's somewhere buried in the business somewhere, there's some analyst who's going, you know, I'm in marketing, and I really want to understand why customers leave us, right? Customer churn. Or there's a risk analyst, and he's like, I really want to understand, you know, where we have higher risks or lower risks. Or maybe they're in logistics, and they say, I really want to understand why my shipments are late, right? And often they say, you know what, it would be really nice to have the help of the data science group to figure this out. What my customers tell me is often there's this barrier where they can't kind of get the help. And so it kind of goes something like this. Business analyst says, hey, I need your help figuring out if this data that we have in this data lake we've been working on for 5 years can help me predict churn. And the data science group says, what's that worth? Because we're a really scarce resource and we have to prioritize. And the business guy says, I have no idea. That's what I need you for, right? You laugh, but it's kind of true, right? Do you guys experience this? Yeah. And so there's this hurdle to overcome. And so by the time the two groups get aligned and they start taking, they start taking action and doing things, it could be weeks or months before they actually deliver some value, right? And so this is kind of what's been going on. So they also said, hey, can you help with this, right? And, you know, whenever, you know, Amazon, right? Whenever somebody says, can you help with something, we're all over it, right? We love to, work backwards is the term we use, right? So there was a few things that we found when we rolled up our sleeves and dove in, right? And so one is when we started looking at the larger problem, we're like, how do we scale this, you know, motion, if you will, right? And so one option is to make the data science groups, the machine learning professionals, more efficient. And we actually have a product for that. It's called Amazon SageMaker. It's a managed service for developing machine learning. I use like an automotive example. It's like, you know, The automotive companies don't build their cars in job shops. They use an assembly line, right? So SageMaker is the assembly line for building machine learning. And we've had SageMaker for 7+ years now, right? So it's highly efficient for the data science teams, right? The other option is to, scale this thing, is to hire more data scientists. Now this is data from a study, the Emerging Jobs Report that LinkedIn puts out. And basically these ML professional jobs, these are the highest growth jobs over the last 4 years, beyond maybe like, vaccine developer or something, right? I don't have any data on that. It's a very fast growing job. I do have data on this, not the vaccine developer, so full transparency. So that means that it's a high demand job. That means they're scarce resources, expensive. Maybe this is not the greatest growth strategy or scale strategy, is to try to just, do unlimited growth there. And so then the third piece, which a lot of my customers tell me, is, hey, let's get the business involved. And here's a conversation that I had a couple of years ago with one of what became a launch partner for Canvas. And he said, look, we've been working on this data lake project for 5 years. It's amazing. It's curated data. It's self-serve data. And what we want to do is give people self-serve insights, right? And he goes, look, I got 20,000 business users touching this thing every day, and they download data to their desktop, or they pull it into a visualization tool like Tableau or QuickSight, right? And then he says, I got 200 data scientists for the 20,000 business users. He goes, can you help me with the 20,000 business users? Right? And so that was the environment that we dove into a couple of years ago, right? So they told us there's a few challenges, right? There always are. When they were looking at scaling out machine learning, they said, look, it's hard to train the business user to become a data scientist. You gotta have not just one class in statistics, you gotta have a bunch of them, right? You gotta know Python and other programming languages, potentially. You need to actually understand what machine learning is, right? The training cycle, the path to uplift a business analyst to a data scientist, that's a graduate degree, basically. So that was kind of a difficult position that companies had. The other thing they said is we don't want to just kind of create another shadow IT group, right? We don't want to just give the business a tool and say, good luck, have fun, and we don't understand what they're doing. And because if you don't understand what it's doing, right? And so what it's doing is what we term auto ML, right? Automatic machine learning. If the experts don't understand what it's doing, they don't trust it, guess what's probably not going to be supported? Guess what's probably not going to be, helped to go into production, right? So they said, look, we got to have the business analysts be able to kind of kickstart that value creation process, but we can't avoid or go do an end around on the data science groups. We need to actually have the data science groups be able to see what it's doing. So it has to be transparent, visible, not a black box. And then there has to be some collaboration too. So that was another challenge. And then finally, there are some offerings out on the market. But here's one thing we heard very strongly from the data science group is they said a lot of that stuff's proprietary, which again hits the trust and credibility issue, right? They couldn't figure out why it chose the things it did. And so they're like, I don't know if I don't understand it, then I'm not sure I want to put anything it comes up with into production. And they also said, hey, we love your consumption-based model. Can you keep that? So fair enough. So this was the context and the environment where we were putting together Canvas on behalf of our customers. And so Amazon Canvas is no-code machine learning aimed at business analysts. Right? And it allows you to kind of take data, ingest data, maybe do a join or two if you need to, automatically build models, get some insights and analysis, and then even make predictions. You can also share what you've done with the data science team, right? And so this is what we'll kind of spend some time talking about, including a live demo. I make sure to keep this machine awake, right, before it shuts down. So let's dive in, right? So the first thing, so how many people are familiar with the AWS console? How many business users do you think are familiar with the AWS console? Yeah, not many, right? So Canvas has the ability, you can set it up with your identity management system, whether you use AWS SSO or whether you use another one like Okta or Active Directory, however you authenticate your single sign-on, you can set that up and they press a tile and it goes directly into the Canvas URL, right? So that was an important distinction that our customers said. It's not that funny. Did you guys hear that? All right. So second thing is you can pull data out of sources, whether it's things like Redshift, which is where a lot of data lakes are built on top of, and S3, of course, right? It's our ubiquitous storage service. But more importantly, you can pull information or pull the data off of the desktop. And so the demo I'm going to do, I'm going to show you an Excel file, because that's where analysts live, right, is in that spreadsheet. You can pull it in. Canvas will kind of take a look at your data, help you take a look at it, right? You can, drop columns, things like that, and then automatically build a model. Now, Canvas handles this by taking a look at the target column. And so maybe I'll back up and say, if you think about a spreadsheet, you have rows and columns, right? And so the question you'll ask Canvas to help you with is, can one of these columns, can you help explain one of those columns with the other ones, right? And so one's the target column and the rest are just everything that might be helpful, right? And so when you tell Canvas what the target column is, Canvas will take a look at it, it'll look at what's inside of there, and it'll come up with a suggestion on what type of model might be appropriate. And so things like what a data scientist would call a binary classifier. So this is like two values. Think about good or bad, or churned or didn't churn for, for a customer churn model. So that's a binary classifier. They can also handle multi-class. So maybe it was high, medium, and low is what you're trying to predict or explain. So that's multi-class. It could be numeric. I want to predict, how many days my shipment's going to be late, or maybe how many hours, right? And so it could be 22, 24, 25, right? So whatever the target column is, Canvas is going to make a suggestion. Could be time series forecasting as an example, if you have a time series data in there, and it'll say, oh, do you want to do a forecast? So Canvas will help evaluate that and then suggest something, right? And then with just a few clicks, you can just, have a model built, and then you can start understanding what it's telling you. So we see customers, see, I almost lost the other PC. I gotta be careful. So we see customers using Canvas in a few different ways. One is that they try out different data and they press the train button a lot. This is what I call exploratory use. And so we actually have a training button, model building button, aimed specifically for that use case. It's not full AutoML. It doesn't do all the best practices, but it does it really fast, 2 to 15 minutes. And so as they're exploring things, they press the button, they explore, they look at it, they say, that's interesting. Okay, maybe I'll try something else, right? There's another use, which is after they press that button a few times, maybe they want to build the best that the AutoML can do, right? So that's what we call standard model. It takes a couple hours, but it runs through the full gamut of AutoML. Data pre-processing, so it'll transform the data into a form that's best used by the algorithms themselves. It'll do the algorithm selection. It'll do the training, the hyperparameter optimization. So if you're not a data scientist, that means like all these little models have inputs. And so if you twist the input knobs a lot, you get a better answer sometimes. It'll do it all for you automatically. So a couple other things I want to mention before we dive into the demo. One is, if you want to share the results with data scientists, you can. We'll show you that. This is really important for collaboration between the two groups and trust building, right? And then if you want to run predictions and what I call a what-if scenario directly in Canvas, you can. And we'll show that as well. So before we dive into the demo, I usually get a couple of questions around, so what's this good for? What kind of use cases can we do? So I would argue that there's lots of use cases within your organization, one for every functional group. So no matter what you do, you probably have a sales and marketing team, you probably have an IT team, you probably have an operations team, right? And others beyond, right? And so there could be all kind of interesting questions. So we have internally to Amazon, we have internal users who use this in the different Amazon organizations. One of them was studying attrition. Why do people leave, right? That's a great question. A lot of people have that question these days because it's the great resignation, right? So we have internal to Amazon. There's groups who have applications that come in. So what's a good application versus what's a bad application, right? So there's lots of different interesting use cases. Here's the key thing. If you really want to take advantage of Canvas, and I would encourage you to play with it yourself, the data it best helps you to have a form of the data which is tabular. So think of a spreadsheet, right? Rows and columns. And then you have one column that has the target variable. So this is the variable you want to have explained. And then all the other things, all the other columns in there will be what we take a look at to see if we can explain that target column, right? And it could be numeric. It could be categorical, right, which I do not have. Well, the target column is categorical, but the other columns could be categorical too: high, medium, low, good, bad, red, blue. Could be time series, could be numeric, right? But think about this. Could be free-form text in some of these variables, right? So if you have data in that form and you can form a question that helps give you insight based on being able to predict or explain that target variable, Canvas will be a really good tool for you. So let's take a look. And so we can go into the live demo. So there, look at that, they've already switched it over. I'm going to tell you about Canvas, but I'm going to be a business analyst and I'm going to start in Excel because this is where a lot of data lives. So let me explain the use case that we're going to talk about. So I'm in marketing and I'm trying to understand why customers leave. But I work for a mobile phone carrier. Not going to say which one. So I have some information, right, that I pulled down from my data lake. And this information is, one, the column that we're interested in. Did they leave or not? So there's false and true. And then I have a bunch of other columns, which is like a combination of like details on the account, like how long they were an account, how long they were a customer, how they used my service, like how many minutes they spent, like did they have an international plan, did they have to call customer service, right? I just have information on the behavior of the customer and the details of their account, right? And I want to see if any of that stuff can explain churn. So that's the use case. So I've got this data, it's in Excel. So when I first come into Canvas, now I've used Canvas a few times, but I pulled this up. If you haven't used Canvas before, there's like a self-guided tour. And so if you ever need to get back to the self-guided tour, there's a little help button that says, oh, this is what you do. Right, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna select data, we're gonna build a model, we're gonna analyze the results, we'll generate some predictions. We may share it with the data science team too. And we can scroll through and see, and they get an indication of kind of what they're gonna be doing. And we're about to expand this even more to make it much more detailed with, examples from different, functional area use cases. So we've got this guide. And so based on the guide, first thing I'm going to do is bring in data sets. I've got data sets. For the purposes of this example, I'm going to bring in some more. And so you've got the ability to go to, like your data lake, or if it's Snowflake or Redshift, you've got the ability to pull data in from our storage bucket, S3. You can also upload it, which is kind of what I'm going to do. So I actually have two little files here. Telco churn is what I showed you. And then the other file is new data, right? So the churn data that I showed you is like history, right? It's like what customers in the past did. This file is new information, and I want to see if they're going to leave, right? So that's why I'm saying new data to be scored. That's just a way to identify that. So I'm just going to drop that down. I could preview it here if I want to. I'm just going to import it. And it'll spin for a second and then bring this data in. So then if I kind of go back to my little guide, what am I supposed to do next? Okay, I'm supposed to choose a target column. That's cool, actually. I'm supposed to select the data set. So let's build a model. All right. It's my churn model. I'm Danny, by the way. And I'm going to choose that telco churn that I had, right? So if I look at it real quick, just to verify, yep, that's, account length and, international plan, and make sure I've got churn. Yep, so there's my churn stuff. And so I'm just going to select the data set. And Canvas is going to start looking at my data, right? And so what it's going to do is it's going to take a peek, and it's going to say, okay, well, here are the columns we found, and we take a look and see what kind of data is in those columns, if there's missing data, or mismatched, or some statistics around it, like how many unique values there are, and maybe what the mode is, and so on. I tend to be a visual person, so I kind of like to look at distributions. And so as an example, it's good to know that international plan is a categorical variable, right? It's just yes or no. So is voicemail plan, but daily minutes is numeric, and this is all good. If you want, as a user, you can kind of turn columns on and off. I'm going to turn one off to show you later that it, just to have it show up. So I'm going to drop, phone number. That's just a, an account ID basically anyway. So I'll drop that, but we'll keep a record of all that you do in terms of this transformation, right? I didn't show you this. When I went to the data set, but I'm going to show you one other thing. And let me just delete these, and I'll start over to kind of show you this too. Come on. There you go. Go away. So if you have data that needs to be connected together, right, you've got different tables and stuff. So like here's some marketing data, and then here's like some sales lead data, different data set, but just to show you. It'll automatically join them together. It'll figure out what the join is. And then if you have some knowledge that you want to have it joined differently and you have that expertise, you can override it, but it kind of figures it out for you, right? So if you need to do some processing on the data, you have the ability to kind of do it. So let's go back to our Danny churn model. So what I haven't done is told that I want to predict churn. So let's go ahead and do that. And so when I say predict churn, it's going to look at churn, and then it's going to say, oh, let's see, false and true. That's the variable. That's the values that are in that. And Canvas is automatically going to predict the two-category prediction model. So this is data science terms. That's a binary classifier, right? You can override it if for some reason it chooses something wrong, but I don't think there's any need to in this point. So we can just run this thing. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of things that you can do, right? And then I'll switch over to one I've already done it, so you don't have to wait 2 to 15 minutes. So one is you can press preview model, right? So if you press preview model, this is like a quick and dirty one-pass kind of examination to see if any of those columns can actually explain churn, right? So, and it comes back pretty quick, within a couple of minutes. So 96% accuracy, we can explain churn with this. That's probably pretty good. That probably means I want to go ahead and press the next buttons. And so to do that, I'm going to switch over to ones where I already have pressed the next buttons. And then we can kind of pick up the story. So in this one, there's two options. One is quick build, right? That's 2 to 15 minutes faster, but doesn't do the full auto ML. And then there's standard build, 2 hours, but it does the full auto ML. So the first one is kind of like good for exploring and getting some initial results. The second one is good for when you want the absolute best model, right? So just to kind of walk through. So preview kind of does that just really quick and dirty, right? So preview says, okay, 96% accuracy, the columns that impact this the most, daily minutes, number of voicemail messages, et cetera, customer service calls. That's interesting. It was interesting enough for me to press quick build. So now let's see what let's see what it looks like. So behind the scenes, the AutoML is doing a couple of things. One is it's taking the data set and it's separating it into train and test. If you're a data scientist or familiar with that, you understand the concept. If you're not, it's not rocket science, right? It's data science. The train data set is what they build the model on, right? And then what they do is they take that test data set and they run it against the model to see how well it predicts something that it didn't actually have when it trained, right? And so this is what this is kind of showing, but in a way that's not too data science-y, right? And so we get some high-level stuff like, if the model predicts false, it's correct 96% of the time. And then for the values that are false in the data set, right? So it's looking at how many false positives, as an example, right? It says we predicted 99% of them. So what you see is, actual prediction, there's 588 of those. We actually predicted 570, which means we misclassified a few. That's a pretty accurate model. I would probably make decisions based on this model. Now, if you have some skill beyond business analysts, but not quite data science, you may be familiar with some of the data science-y stuff, right? So this is a confusion matrix. Confusion matrix says, gives you indications about, how many false positives it had. I tend to look at false positives a lot because if I want to make a decision, but the model tells me something wrong, I just want to understand, how many of the times that's going to be. And so it'll have things like what we call fit statistics. And so we display accuracy, but we actually build on F1. And so F1 is kind of like a combination metric that says, is it good, for the data set we have, and is it also good for the test data set? And it looks at the balance. And so usually F1's a better way to use prediction. So if you know all that stuff, you have access to the details. If you don't, you just kind of say, okay, look at that, 96%, that's cool. Here's a more interesting, to me, for the business analyst, this is a more interesting thing, is it also shows you the relative relationships between individual features, columns, and the prediction. And so I'll give you a great real-world example. So we're a mobile phone company, right? And we're trying to figure out why customers churn. And if the model predicts true, here's the relationship between the number of customer service calls and the impact to the prediction. And so what this is saying is, if they have more than 3 calls, it's a much greater chance that they're going to churn. This actually makes sense to me, right? Because if I have to call my provider, 4 times, I'm probably going to be irritated with them. But if you think about it from the business analyst standpoint, what would be really cool is this gives you insights you may not have already had. And in this example, it could be, well, maybe I'll make sure that all the frequently asked questions are on the website in an easy to access manner so that they don't have to call customer service. So I can kind of steer the behavior. So there's some good insight capability in here. Now, back to my use case, I want to see if I can predict when customers can churn. I've got a model, so I'm going to do a prediction. So there's a couple of ways we can do it. One is batch, right? So you remember I had that data set, new data to be churned, just to kind of show you. It's all kind of similar information, except I don't know if they're going to leave yet, right? I don't know if they've left, that's what I want to predict. And so I'm just going to run that data through the model and see what it tells me. All right, so when it runs through, we can take a look. We get predictions. We also get probability. So we think this account's going to churn 96% chance, 96% probability, right? So this is one place where, a tool like Canvas can help a business analyst understand the uses of machine learning. And one of those uses is nothing's a fixed answer, right? It's always a probability curve. So I went to an engineering school. I spent a lot of time with engineers, like mechanical engineers, electrical. Sometimes this concept is hard for them because they're used to like first principles of physics model, right? It's like an equation, y equals fx. Well, this is like, probability curve, right? But business leaders are used to this kind of thing. They're used to making decisions with uncertainty. And so this is like, okay, we think this account's going to churn, 96% probability. I'd make a decision on putting them through a retention campaign, right? However, if I had something lower, like 71%, I don't know if I'd make that decision, right? So you're going to have to learn where your boundaries are, right? And decide. But at least now you have more information. You can download this. So like if we went to the lowest common denominator back to the spreadsheet on the desktop, we could just come in and just to close off that storyline, I'll show you how I would do it. Where'd it go? Oh, I saved it, sorry. Let's try this another way. Here it comes. So, I'd probably come in and say, you know what, I want to look at that in something that I can understand that doesn't have, 6 decimal places, and, then maybe I want to, filter this and say, okay, I only want to see true values, and then I probably sort it, right? So if I could drive and talk at the same time. So as a business user, I would kind of sort down, and I'd look at the ones with high probability, and then I'd take them and run the campaign, right? Run the retention campaign for them, right? Okay, so let's close down that kind of path that we spent time with. And close that one too. And then there's one other thing. So let's say that we weren't sure this was a good answer, right? And so one of the options we have is to run that full model, right? We get like a complete examination by the AutoML, right? So this is about the best that AutoML can give us. So if we like that answer, we can act on it. But the other thing we can do is we can just say, hey, you know what, I want to share with my data science group. So I can come in and say, can you verify? Thanks. And then just something real simple, you can just send them a link, which then they can kind of use to open up in their preferred user interface, which is SageMaker Studio. So this is SageMaker Studio. Now we're full-on data science ML professional, right? But we have this curated view of what the AutoML in Canvas did, right? And so one is, you remember I said we dropped that column. So it shows the kind of data flow column dropping step that we did. It also did a bunch of behind the scenes data pre-processing and analysis of the data sets. And so we can kind of take a look at this. I'm not going to open the notebook, but you can open the notebook and look at the code if you want, right? But just as an example, one of the things we do is take a look at the columns and see if they basically represent the same idea, right? And so that's a cross-column statistic. And so as an example, total international charge and total international minutes are about the same bit of information, right? So we just, we do some processing on that data to kind of see if it's useful and make decisions on it in the AutoML. You also get to see the full examination of all the different algorithms, models, hyperparameter tunings and stuff. It does about 100 iterations of that. So it picks out the best model, which we'll look at in a second, and then all the other models. If we want to see kind of what it was doing, again, you can click on the notebook and take a look from a code standpoint, but let's scroll down just a second. So we can kind of take a look and see, okay, so this particular snippet of code, this is a candidate selection or candidate generation code. It basically said, let's try this model type called XGBoost. I'll get to you in just a second. So XGBoost, and then it's going to do some conversion, right, because there was some missing value potentially, and then it's going to do another transformation which makes the data set better for machine learning. If you're interested in the data science aspects, find me outside, and then you have the code, right? So that's all available too. We had a question from the...
Yeah, so I was just a little confused. Where's the integration between SageMaker and Canvas? Is Canvas located within SageMaker, or is Canvas a completely different platform and then SageMaker
Canvas is part of SageMaker. So think about it as Canvas is a user experience for somebody who doesn't want to do any coding at all. And Studio is a user experience for people who want to see the code, you live and die by code and notebooks and stuff. They're kind of parallel. And then underneath, right, is all the technical capabilities and the functional capabilities of SageMaker platform, right, the managed service itself, right? So that's probably a better way to look at it. And so the integration, it's just, it lives inside, right? And so all we do, like when we create this, send me the link, all we're really doing is saying, go look at this location, which is where we've gathered up all the information from the SageMaker, managed service infrastructure of what we've done. Does that help? Yeah. So to continue the story, we've got this best model. The best model, by the way, if you're interested in the algorithm, it's XGBoost. XGBoost is a really popular algorithm. It wins a lot of contests. You can dig into the details, right? So you can kind of see all the details from a data science standpoint, right? So as an example, here's explainability. We still see those feature importance columns, but we see it in a way data science wants. We see fit statistic metrics, right, which are just different ways of showing how accurate it is. We see things like, all those input parameters where you could fiddle around with them and tune it and get a better answer. Those are the hyperparameters. You get to see the exact values of the hyperparameters. If you want, and if you need to, you can look at performance characteristics. And so there's a few interesting things here. If you actually want to keep track of this stuff, and many people do, You can, download a performance report, and it'll kind of tell you all the stuff, right, in a human-readable form for documentation. You can also have access directly to what we call the artifacts. So if you want to look at the code itself, if you want to look at the model code, if you want to look at any detail, you have access to this. And so there's no hidden black box proprietary stuff we're doing, right? It's all visible so the data scientists can view it, can verify it, and then can trust it. And if they wanted to, they could press this button and then deploy it into a production endpoint even. So there's a lot of good things for the data scientists in here too. Question?
What models or frameworks that we consider? Before you showed the screen, I thought it might be running the AWS AutoML, like one they use just neural networks. So it looks like it's looking at
It does. It looks at tree-based models, things like XGBoost. It looks at, there are some neural networks in there. This is an area that will continue to evolve. And so the answer next month, or next year may be more, may be different than it is now, because what we're trying to do is get the best accuracy and the best fit statistics. And since it's a managed service, we kind of take on that responsibility. So I'm sure there'll be different algorithms as we proceed forward. And it also depends on what type of problem. So if you want to solve a time series problem, we may use Profit and Deep AR and some other algorithms. So I'm happy to spend more time with you. So the question was, is if you want to deploy it, does it deploy it as a Python, like a Py file, or there's other model PMMs, things like that. When I said deploy in production, I meant as a production endpoint, right? So that you could call, you could send data to it and get model predictions and stuff. So behind the scenes, this is not a Canvas specific thing, it's a SageMaker. So SageMaker has a model repository that containerizes these things and puts them in the model repository. And so that's some of the, like these artifacts, if you want to go look at that algorithm, right? It's actually, you'll see it's a tar file, so getting a little technically detailed. So I'm happy to talk more with you, but yes? It does. No. So the question is, there's two parts to the question. Does Canvas pick the algorithm automatically? Yes. If there's a new algorithm, that's the first part. The second part is if there's a new algorithm next week, will it automatically retrain based on the new algorithm? It will not do that yet, anyway. It's a great suggestion. So. This Canvas leverages the same technology underneath that Amazon Forecast leverages, right? So there's a series of things like ARIMA and Profit and Deep AR and stuff that Amazon Forecast uses. So Canvas has access to that same repository of, algorithms. So I saw a question here. So it does in this regard, where it shows you kind of like the feature importance of the various columns, right? And so in this example, having an international plan was significant, right? As was daily minutes. And so, this customer service, or let's see, some other examples just come through, right? So you can kind of see the relationships. But in this example, international plan is highly impactful, right? So as a marketing person, I could say, okay, I want to try to get people on the international plan. The other thing I could do is say, you know what, I don't have any control over that, so I'm just going to take that variable out of the model, run it again, and see if it can tell me something else that's useful that I actually have control over. So from an exploratory standpoint, you can kind of, that's why the 2 to 15-minute model run would be very appealing as you start, do I really want this column in here? I don't know, right? Press the button and see what happens, and then operate. Yes? Yeah, there's also some other ways to do it, right? So when we ran batch prediction, we could have also run this what if single prediction, right? And so here's, like, it'll precede values here, right? And so right now the prediction's false based on the values, but if you remember from the story, this customer service call, well, that's 1, right? But if it goes to 4, are they gonna churn? Well, 99% of probability they are gonna churn, right? And so this what if capability gives the business user a way to ask questions of the model and kind of learn the behavior. And then as we build out Canvas over time, we'll provide additional help with them with like output reports and stuff that kind of explain the boundaries and things. More work yet for us to do. Yes, sir. There are definitely tree-based models, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure there's a specific. I'm not sure there's a specific random forest like alone. So it does use neural nets, but for tabular data. So at the moment, only tabular data. So if you have images and you want to do a computer vision, right, where you predict based on images, Canvas does not allow you to do that yet. There's always limits. Yeah. So are there limits on the tabular data? So right now, Canvas can handle about 1,000, not about, exactly 1,000 columns, right? So if you think about the width of the data set, it can handle 1,000 at the moment, and we're looking to increase that, actively working on it. And then in terms of rows, there's like an absolute limit at the moment of like 5 gig for the data set size. And we're working to, right now, to increase that to 10 gig. And so a good way to figure out how much gig your data set is rows times columns times, the size of, the data inside the row, which, 8 bytes or whatever. So it can handle pretty big, but not massive, right, at the moment. But we're actively working to kind of expand that. We have seen that behavior. So the question is, have you found data scientists using Canvas to do quick first pass? We have absolutely seen that behavior with our internal Amazon groups as well as our customers, external customers. What we found is it turns out data scientists don't necessarily want to do a lot of manual work to run through 100 iterations of a tree-based model because that's not exciting to them. Right? That's kind of like, okay, I did that in high school. Now what do you want me to do, right? And so we have seen some people using Canvas because it's part of the platform. They can just switch over easily. We also see people taking advantage of the low-code capabilities within SageMaker Studio. So there's things like Data Wrangler, which is like low-code or point-and-click data prep. There's things like Autopilot, which is the data scientist's AutoML with more configuration capabilities. And then there's also things like Jumpstart. And so Jumpstart is where they take like best practice big models for like NLP and computer vision like BERT and things like that and pre-package them so that they're really easy for somebody to use. Jumpstart also has like, best-in-class pipeline solutions that you could just kind of take and run for things like predicting corporate credit score and stuff. So data scientists tend to spend more time in Studio, but we definitely have seen them use Canvas. And we had this session yesterday. A data scientist told me afterwards, it's like, I see this as like a force multiplier to kind of, because I'm supporting 10 business analysts, And if they can take the heavy lift off of me, then I can focus on the really hard things, and they can get, good answers from this. So we need to wrap up soon. I have like 1 or 2 more slides. So if you don't mind, switch back over to the presentation. There we go. So I want to wrap up by just asking a question, which I want you to take back and ask of your organization. So what questions can your data answer? Right? And so it's a good question to take back, because this is what our customers were asking themselves when we started talking to them about Canvas, or the possibility of Canvas, right? Can this explain this? Can this predict this, right? So you'd be amazed at what you see. So just in summary, if you think about it, now we've kind of completed the ML journey, starting from the beginning where the problems exist, the business users and the line of business, but not leaving behind or blocking out the data science groups, right? Now we have a nice collaborative effort. And so I want to recommend that if you want to get started, you'll have this deck soon enough, but take a look at Canvas, reach out. There's some other things you may be interested in before I get to my email. So if you're interested in cloud skills, take a look at some of this information. I personally want to thank you for staying. So I'm Danny Smith. This is my email. Don't ask me why it's my email. They just gave me that, It's not connected. Smith is good, but I don't know what the WHB is. But please reach out to me directly. Happy to have conversations with you outside as well as in the future. And then finally, as always, fill out the session. We love to understand if you found this valuable and if we need to improve. So with that, thank you so much.